Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are continuing chapter 23, the double soul in man, and page number
240.
Beginning with the line, but it might seem then that by bringing the psychic entity.
So, we start reading?
Yes.
We read the whole para first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it might seem then that by bringing this psychic entity, this true soul in us, into the front and giving it there the lead and rule, we shall gain all the fulfillment of our natural being that we can seek for and open also the gates of the kingdom of the Spirit. And it might well be reasoned that there is no need for any intervention of a superior truth consciousness or principle of supermind to help us to attain to the divine status or the divine perfection. Yet, although the psychic transformation is one necessary condition for the total transformation of our existence, it is not all that is needed for the largest spiritual change. In the first place, since this is the individual soul in nature, it can open to the hidden diviner ranges of our being and receive and reflect their light and power and experience. But another, a spiritual transformation from above, is needed for us to possess ourselves in its universality and transcendence. By itself, the psychic being, at a certain stage, might be content to create a formation of truth, good, and beauty, and make that its station. At a farther stage, it might become passively subject to the world self, a mirror of the universal existence, consciousness, power, delight, but not their full participant or possessor. Although more nearly and thrillingly united to the cosmic consciousness in knowledge, emotion, and even appreciation through the senses, it might become purely recipient and passive, removed from mastery and action in the world, or one with the static self behind the cosmos, but separate inwardly from the world movement, losing its individuality in its source. It might return to that source and have neither the will nor the power any further for that which was its ultimate mission here, to lead the nature also towards its divine realization. For the psychic being came into nature from the self, the divine, and it can turn back from nature to the silent divine through the silence of the self and a supreme spiritual immobility. Again, an eternal portion of the divine, this part is by the law of the infinite, inseparable from its divine whole. This part is indeed itself that whole, except in its frontal appearance, its frontal separative self-experience. It may awaken to that reality and plunge into it to the apparent extinction or at least the merging of the individual existence. A small nucleus here in the mass of our ignorant nature, so that it is described in the Upanishad as no bigger than a man's thumb, it can, by the spiritual influx, enlarge itself and embrace the whole world with its heart and mind in an intimate communion or oneness. Or it may become aware of its eternal companion and elect to live forever in its presence, in an imperishable union and oneness as the eternal lover with the eternal beloved, which of all spiritual experiences is the most intense in beauty and rapture. All these are great and splendid achievements of our spiritual self-finding, but they are not necessarily the last end and entire consummation. More is possible.
Well, for me, this has been an extraordinary paragraph on the psychic being
Yes,
and what it can do.
yes.
But in the beginning, he seems to say that it may not do what.
The individual may not feel the necessity of going any farther.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
Exactly.
So, and he has given about 7 or 8 possibilities that the
Yes.
psychic being can take the line towards. So we'll have a look at that.
Good.
And we'll see what he's saying. So, in fact, when the psychic being comes forward, you have the phenomenon of the saint. He becomes saintly and love of the divine. It's so intently he gets absorbed into himself that he is interested in nothing else and he feels it's more than enough. That's the whole problem with the self also. When you go to the self, tremendous peace. So you feel nothing else is needed. But Srivamda wants peace, power, love also.
Says this is not enough.
Yeah, love and peace and power don't come at the self. They come only higher up. So we'll have a look at that.
Good.
I'll read each sentence. But it might seem then that by bringing this psychic entity, this true soul in us, into the front and giving it there the lead and rule, we shall gain all the fulfillment of our natural being that we can seek for and open also the gates of the kingdom of the spirit. So, he is talking about fulfillment of the natural being. The natural being is the body-mind life. So, the outer nature is the natural being, and when the psychic comes forward, it transforms, it purifies the body-mind life. There are no more wrong movements, wrong thoughts, nothing. It will take you by the neck and make you do the right thing without any, and immediately you will come to know there is no argument or no thought. It's a process where.
Good image.
Yes. It makes you do the right thing. Okay? So, suppose you made a mistake, it immediately corrects it. It knows what is the wrong thing you have done and it corrects it. Okay? It's a very interesting thing. There are so many things that can happen when that happens. So, but immediately, as soon as there is a wrong movement, immediately you come to know. And sometimes it's come to know even like a mother says, use the word in French, and tape sur le nez. That one rap on the knuckles in English. Immediately you come to, oh, there's something wrong. So you are guided intimately in every small movement. So this is what he's saying. So you feel sufficient. The being is purified, everything is fine, there is love, there is intimacy, you feel tremendous intimacy to the divine. I don't need anything else. So that's what you feel. Okay, so, and rule, somebody is using the word rule, lead and rule. It rules the body-mind life. Okay, we shall gain all the fulfillment of our natural being. So, the body-mind life gets completely, you can say almost transformed, that's a psychic transformation, that we can seek for and open also the gates of the kingdom of the spirit. The kingdom of the spirit is the one above, that's right, the self. So, it opens the door to the self, and at the bottom, purification has been done. But of course, it just can't be one small experience. It has to be a complete coming forward and taking charge of body-mind life. That doesn't happen very easily. Okay, then, and it might well be reasoned that there is no need for any intervention of a superior truth consciousness or the principle of supermind to help us to attain the divine status or the divine perfection. So, he is talking of two things. He is saying, Srivamda never wastes his words. Divine status or divine perfection. Divine status is you have reached the divine there, but perfection is not there. That means to say, you have not been able to bring down all that into the body-mind life. There is a difference. He doesn't waste his words. When he is saying divine status or divine... The word status means it suggests static. When you go up, you are in the immutable, permanent consciousness. There you are open to all the power, love and everything, if that is your experience. But when you come down into your body-mind life, that power seems to be somewhere else. You don't seem to. So that's a divine perfection that is spoken. When Srivamda speaks of divine perfection, he means also change in the body-mind life. You are living in your normal consciousness here, but you have the divine power, divine knowledge, and divine love. That may not happen in the static consciousness.
So what he says about,
Pardon?
he talks later in the chapter.
Yeah, different combinations. That's
there are
right.
two liberations. One is liberation of the soul, and the other is liberation of nature from lower nature.
Yes.
So
He
that-
talked, yeah, that's right. So we'll look at all those cases. I think there are 6 or 7 cases
Yes,
he has given. So, yet, although the psychic transformation is one necessary condition for the total transformation of our existence, it is not all that is needed for the largest spiritual change. The largest spiritual change would include even change of body. Okay. In the first place, since this is the individual soul in nature, it can open to the hidden diviner ranges of our being and receive and reflect their light and power and experience. But another, a spiritual transformation from above, is needed for us to possess ourself in its universality and transcendence. So, when he's saying, in the first place, since there is the individual soul, note the individuality as well as the, so individual means the personal, but you must have the impersonal aspect also. And the impersonal will be available only in the cosmic consciousness which is above, not below. In the, when he's talking of the hidden diviner ranges, he's talking of the intraconscient. You go into your
Right,
intraconscient,
right.
the hidden divine ranges are the intraconscient. Then, ranges of our being and receive and reflect their light. So when you are in the intraconscient, you may receive and reflect their light, but you don't possess the light.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, you don't possess it. Reflect their light and power and experience, but another, a spiritual transformation from above is needed for us to possess ourselves in its universality and transcendence. So Sri Aurobindo is very, very particular about the word possess. So we stress that again and again. Possess means you are, what you possess, you are master of. You can do what you want with it. So he wants possession, not simply reflection.
Here he's saying that he's qualified it with the word possess ourself in its universality and transcendence.
Yes.
But individual you are possessing, but you are not possessing the universality and transcendence. So out of the 3 poises, when the psychic being comes forward and the psychic transformation has taken place and you
Yes.
are possessing the psychic self, but not the universal and not the transcendent.
That's right. That's what he's saying. So for that, the psychic has to go up. That will be one of the cases in the next, what he's going to discuss. So to possess ourself in its universality and transcendence. By itself, the psychic being at a certain stage might be content to create a formation of truth, good and beauty and make that its station. So it's very possible that it is satisfied with its just its psychic transformation. And it makes a certain stage might content to create a formation of truth, good and beauty and make that its station. It has not gone to the higher level. At a farther stage, it might become passively subject to the world self, a mirror of the universal existence, consciousness, power, delight, but not their full participant or possessor. When he speaks of the passive, you have the experience, you have the light, but you are unable to use it. You are unable to use the power. It's a passive thing.
Again, possessor.
Yeah, you can't possess it when it's passive. It has to be active. He uses the word passive and active for that. So, the psychic being may decide to be satisfied only with the passive aspect. That's what he's saying. Then he's saying, although more nearly and thrillingly united with the cosmic consciousness in knowledge, emotion, and even appreciation through the senses, that's very interesting. It might become purely recipient and passive, removed from mastery and action in the world. There you are. So, it is very satisfied by making a sort of home for itself. He is using the word, it might become passive, a formation. He said it might be content to create a formation of truth, beauty and good. At the lower level, it makes a formation and lives in that its own self-created formation of truth, good and beauty. It's wonderful, but it's not enough. Although more nearly and thrillingly united in the cosmic consciousness, note the word thrillingly. It's a very interesting word. There is a thrill in it. So, okay, so united with the cosmic consciousness in knowledge, emotion, and even appreciation through the senses. In other words, even your senses will participate in this love and this sense of beauty and all. Even the senses will participate. It might become purely recipient and passive, remote from mastery and action in the world. That's what he means by passive. Action in the world, it is not able to utilize its knowledge and its power. It has the power and knowledge, but when you put it into practice, you can't put it into practice. Somewhere it seems to be very far away. That's exactly what Sri Aurobindo went in. He wrote to Mother, I have mentioned this before. The heavens we have conquered, but not yet the earth. In other words, the power and knowledge that we have got there is an inability to apply that in the physical world. That is on the first floor, and we are on the second floor, it's not yet coming down. That's why in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, there is a question of ascent and descent. That descent is essential. You may rise up there and experience the power and knowledge, but now you have to come down. When you come down, you have to come down with that knowledge. But if you don't come down with that knowledge, you come down into your normal self, you are back in the grip of lower nature. The senses will, your attachment and all these things will come back. As Mother says, in French she says, le mauvais plis for reform. The creases will come back. If you iron a cloth, it straightens it out, but as soon as you come down again, the bad creases will form again. That's the image that Mother uses. Yeah, it's a very beautiful image. And in Vivekananda, the same image, a dog's tail. He says, the dog, straighten it as much as you want, leave it, it will go back to its crooked curl.
That's the lower nature.
Yeah. Okay, so removed from mastery and action in the world, or one with the, another case, or one with the static self behind the cosmos, but separate inwardly from the world movement, losing its individuality in its source, it might return to that source and have neither the will nor the power any further for that which was its ultimate mission here. And what is that mission? To lead the nature also towards its divine realization. Not only the self, not only your true being, but also the nature. Your body, mind, life also must participate in that power and knowledge and love.
And yet it might return to the source.
Yes. No, the source it is going to. But it's not interested in action in the world.
But no action in the world.
Yeah, that's right. It is going to the source. It goes to the self. But that's all. It is static condition, not an active condition. That's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. Might return to that source, and this is what the ascetic does. The ascetic does exactly that. But the ascetic does that without the transformation of the psyche. Mm-hmm. He goes straight there. And that's all the more reason why he doesn't want to make any change in the body-mind life, because it remains imperfect. And he argues that way. He will say, what is the use of coming? This is impossible to change. So I reject it. I want to be only there.
And so he doesn't have the joy and beauty of the psychic.
He won't have. The ascetic won't have.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
He has that wideness.
Yeah, he has wideness, peace. Yeah. He has knowledge. He will have also liberty. Mm-hmm. He will feel himself to be free from the body-mind life, prison of body-mind life. All that will be there. Most satisfying. That's why they stop there. No? That's the Buddhistic solution. Go to the self and be free. So, and lead the nature. But he's saying, it's ultimate mission. In that case, if it does that, it's not realizing its ultimate mission. And that ultimate mission is the lead the nature also. Not only the self, but the nature also. Not only Purusha, but Prakriti also must participate in that beauty and that power. Towards the divine realization. For the psychic being came into nature from the self, the divine, and it can turn back from nature to the silent divine through the silence of the self and a supreme spiritual immobility. Note the word silence and immobility. When you go up there, it's not active. The activity, if you can bring down that power and knowledge into the physical world and apply it in your daily actions, then you have power. Then it is not immobile anymore, it is active. That's what it means. Again, an eternal portion of the divine. There's a footnote, we'll read that footnote later.
It's Gita, it's saying that it's the Gita.
Acha, he is quoting the Gita. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So, the divine, this part is by, this eternal portion of the divine is Para Prakriti Jiva Bhuta. That's what he is referring to. This part is by the law of the infinite, inseparable from the divine whole. This part is indeed itself that whole, except in its frontal appearance, its frontal separative self-experience. Frontal appearance is body-mind life. So, it may awaken to that reality and plunge into it to the apparent extinction or at least the merging of the individual existence. So, again two things, apparent extinction or at least the merging of the individual existence. The apparent extinction would be the disappearance of the ego. The ego disappears, but the individuality is there. That's why he's saying apparent extinction. But there can also be an extinction of the individuality also. That's what the Buddhists do. I'll be a little more specific on that. When you are experiencing a cosmic consciousness, ego is not there. The individuality is there, experiencing. So if I ask the question, who is experiencing this cosmic consciousness? The true individuality. But a time comes when there is no one to experience that cosmic consciousness because itself you become the cosmic consciousness. Now even that individuality disappears. That's the Buddhistic solution. Okay, so it may awaken to that reality and plunge into it to the apparent extinction or at least the merging of the individual existence. Now he is describing the psychic being. A small nucleus here in the mass of our ignorant nature, so that it is described in the Upanishad as no bigger than a man's thumb. It can, by spiritual influx, enlarge itself and embrace the whole world with the light and mind in an intimate communion or oneness. So that enlarge itself is very interesting, although it's speaking of the Angushtamatra Purusha, but it can become large. And I think I mentioned once, when Rijuta was there in his mother's room, she saw behind her, I was thinking somebody else, but I got it corrected later on. She saw behind Rijuta a being larger than her body. The psychic being had become larger than her body. And mother says, probably that would be the supermental body in future.
You knew her? You knew Rijuta?
I had met her several.
I knew her well.
Yeah, you knew her well?
Because she was, for the American people, she did the correspondence.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I didn't know her well, but I know very well what she was, and I've had interaction with her once or twice. Okay, so enlarge itself. That's the interesting part. It can enlarge itself and embrace the whole world with the heart and mind in an intimate communion or oneness. Another case, or it may become aware of the eternal companion and elect to live forever in his presence in an imperishable union and oneness as the eternal lover with the eternal beloved, which of all spiritual experiences is the most intense in beauty and rapture. So, it realizes his union with the highest. So, pardon?
The transcendental.
Eternal companion. So, or it may become aware of its eternal companion and elect to live forever in his presence in an imperishable union and oneness as the eternal lover with the eternal beloved, which of all spiritual experiences is the most intense in beauty and rapture because it's a question of devotion and love. You become one in love. There are many who say that if you love the divine, you can't become the divine. If you become the divine, you can't have love because there are no two. But Sri Aurobindo says both are possible. You can have union with the divine and yet love him.
Yes.
which is impossible for the mind to understand. But that's what he says, that is possible.
Simultaneously, he's the one who says that simultaneously you can have both, but in actual fact, currently in the sense Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he used to alternate between the two. It was not simultaneous. So it's called the Achintya Chintya Bhedavad, in which you either become the Bhakta or you become Krishna himself. That is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to experience.
Okay, then now we come to the last sentence. All these are great and splendid achievements of our spiritual self-finding, but they are not necessarily the last end and entire consummation. More is possible. Note the word necessarily the last end. So for many it can be the last end and they are more than satisfied with that. They say, I don't want anything else. I've had union with the Divine, I love Him, that's enough. It's wonderful enough. But there's no need. But still they say more can be done. Okay. We go to the next paragraph?
Yes, let's carry on.
For these are achievements of the spiritual mind in man. They are movements of that mind passing beyond itself, but on to its own plane into the splendors of the spirit. Mind, even at its highest stages, far beyond our present mentality, acts yet in its nature by division. It takes the aspects of the eternal and treats each aspect as if it were the whole truth of the eternal being and can find in each its own perfect fulfillment. Even it erects them into opposites and creates a whole range of these opposites. The silence of the Divine and the Divine dynamis. The immobile Brahman, aloof from existence, without qualities, and the active Brahman with qualities, Lord of existence, being and becoming, the Divine Person, and an impersonal pure existence. The Divine Person and the impersonal pure existence. It can then cut itself away from the one and plunge itself into the other as the sole abiding truth of existence. It can regard the person as the sole reality or the impersonal as alone true. It can regard the lover as only a means of expression of eternal love, or love as only the self-expression of the lover. It can see beings as only personal powers of an impersonal existence, or impersonal existence as only a state of one being, infinite person. Its spiritual achievement, its road of passage towards the supreme aim, will follow these dividing lines. But beyond this movement of spiritual mind is the higher experience of the supermind, truth consciousness. There, these opposites disappear and these partialities are relinquished in the rich totality of a supreme and integral realization of eternal being. It is this that is the aim we have conceived, the consummation of our existence here by an ascent to the supramental truth consciousness and its descent into our nature. The psychic transformation, after rising into the spiritual change, has then to be completed, integralized, exceeded and uplifted by a supramental transformation which lifts it to the summit of the ascending endeavor.
Interesting.
So, here also we'll have to look at a few things because you uses the words, so what those words mean, we'll have to look at it carefully. We'll do that. So first of all, he's saying the psychic transformation is wonderful. For these are achievements of the spiritual mind in man. Okay, so the psychic has gone into the upper layers and experienced all these possibilities. Either it gets stuck in the self and is satisfied, or it becomes active, or it remains passive. All these possibilities are there. So they are wonderful experience of the spiritual mind in man. When he is speaking of the mind in man, he is talking of the higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind, overmind. This he calls mind consciousness. So basically if I had a board, I would have put it, body-mind life is the lower hemisphere. You draw a line. Then the ideal planes of consciousness or the spiritual planes of consciousness, higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind, overmind. These are the spiritual planes of consciousness. Draw a line, supermind. So these are the three. In the lower, the world is real to you, but you are not seeing the reality. All this that I am seeing is real to me, it's not unreal, but it is not the reality. There is a reality behind that. I am not seeing the reality. You go to the second level, spiritual level, the world becomes unreal. But I see the reality behind everything. The world as it is, I don't see the reality. They are all shadow play of images. You go to the third level, now you see both the forms as real as well as the reality also you see at the third level. So that's what Srimati is going to discuss now. Okay, so the lower hemisphere, upper hemisphere and the supermind. Okay, so these are achievements of the spiritual mind in man. They are movements of that mind passing beyond itself. When you go beyond, the first stage you come to is the higher mind. The mind, no thoughts at all, and you go there, ego has disappeared, you go to the self. Passing beyond itself, but on its own plane, that's the whole point. It remains at the higher mind, element mind, intuitive, this mind plane of consciousness. It's not gone to supermind yet, and it is crossed the lower hemisphere. It's not in the body mind life anymore. The consciousness has gone up into the splendors of the spirit. Mind, even at its highest stages, far beyond our present mentality, acts yet in its nature by division. This division starts even at the overmind level. Higher mind, what by division he will explain. So, for us at the lower end, in the lower atmosphere, when we are in our body-mind life, we see multiplicity only. We don't see the oneness at all. When you go to the higher mind level, you see there is a sense of oneness that also comes because the ego has disappeared. But you see two different aspects of the divine. You see spirit and matter as separate. They don't see them as joined. The joining occurs only at the highest supramental level. So he is explaining that. Mind, even at its highest stages, that's he's talking of the overmind, far beyond our present mentality, acts yet in its nature by division. You must remember that at the supramental level there is a oneness. As soon as that Satchidananda comes down to the overmind level, division starts. The division starts at the overmind level. So what form it takes, he is telling us. It takes the aspects of the eternal and treats each aspect as if it was the whole truth of the eternal being and can find in each its own perfect fulfillment. He is explaining now. Even it erects them into opposites and creates a whole range of these opposites. If you are a Srirandonian, then you will not see opposites, but you will see two poles of the same reality. You will see that they are two poles of the same reality. But you can consider them as opposites. Light, darkness, opposites. Okay? Now he is explaining. And creates a whole range of these opposites. First case, silence of the divine and the divine dynamics. The upper layer is silent and the world is dynamic. So you see two different aspects. Then the next one. The immobile Brahman, aloof from existence, without qualities, what you call featurelessness, and the active Brahman with qualities, Saguna, Nirguna. So, the divine with qualities is the physical world. The divine in the self is qualityless. No qualities at all. Immutable, featureless, the self. Without qualities, and the active Brahman with qualities. Lord of existence, being and becoming, the divine person and an impersonal pure existence. So that also is possible. You are in a consciousness where everything is impersonal. You will experience love, you will experience peace, you will experience knowledge, even power perhaps, but nobody is there. It's impersonal. States of consciousness. When you go to the Purushottama consciousness, you see that there is a Lord who is governing his kingdom and he is like a king sitting on top, the personal aspect of the divine. Okay, so Srimati uses the word Ishvara. Ishvara is the Lord. And Gita uses the word Purushottama. Purusha Uttama. Okay, so the immobile Brahman aloof from existence. The divine person and the impersonal pure existence. It can then cut itself from the one and plunge itself into the other as the whole abiding truth of existence. It can regard the person as the sole reality or the impersonal as alone true. So this is the saguna and the nirguna aspects. Divine with qualities, divine without qualities. And Sriaurobindo has a very interesting description of this in the Synthesis, where he says that sometimes you can be in the impersonal aspect of the divine, and you can also sometimes be in the personal aspect of the divine. Sometimes you will find yourself divided, part of you is there and part of you is here. That also is possible. But they are separate, they are not one. The separation disappears only at the supramental level. That's the interesting part. And so when Sriaurobindo had the overmind experience in 1926, this is what he found. And that's why he knew that there is another thing to be done yet. So he withdrew. And started putting the Superman down. Because that's what is needed. He saw this difference and he understood that. So he's giving you all the differences, no? So he's saying divine person and impersonal pure existence. It can then cut itself away from one and plunge itself into the other as the sole abiding truth of existence. It can regard the person as the sole reality or the impersonal as alone true. Clear? So, we might as well mention something here. To every impersonal force, there is a personality representing it. This is something that we have to realize. Let's say the wind, okay? It's impersonal. There is no person there. But there will be a person representing it at the overmind level. There will be a god of wind.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, to everything like that, which is impersonal, even psychological qualities, there will be a personal aspect of it. So that is something very important. Personality and impersonality both exist. We mustn't think that they don't exist. That's why these gods all exist at the overmind level and millions of gods. Because each thing in the physical world which is impersonal, there will be a god representing it. So this is something interesting. Personality and impersonality are joined like that together. So either you can experience this or experience that. So it can regard the lover as only a means of expression of the eternal love, or love as only the self-expression of that lover. So you can have either the experience of only love, or you can have the experience of the lover. In 1962, I think, Mother had a tremendous experience. For a long time there was no life in the body also. I think it was about half an hour. And she had the experiences, vast pulsations of love. That experience was something tremendous. I think it was 1962.
I think so.
So that love, you can experience only love. It was there. As far as I remember, the word she had used was waves and pulsations of love. It was a huge experience for her.
And at that time, she
Pardon?
didn't have a pulse, in the sense there was, you said no, that at that time her body was not...
Yeah, there was no sign of life. And that is why later on also she used to say, she used to go on telling everybody, if you don't see any sign of life in the body, please don't be in a hurry to put me into a box. She used to go on saying that. Because it's a state of catalepsy. In a state of catalepsy, there is no sign of life at all. But a person can come back. And this need not happen only with spiritual people. It can happen even with ordinary human beings. There are any number of cases where a person is declared dead, and when the person is brought back home, there was a case recently in Madras. A person was declared dead in the hospital and the doctor said, please take the person away, he is gone. Came back home and he sits up. So the family got so upset with the doctors, they said, what sort of doctors are these? They are declaring a person who is living to be dead, we make a case against them. But actually the doctor is not wrong, because there is no sign of life.
Right.
So if the judge knew that this phenomenon can take place, he would have exonerated the doctor. I don't know what happened, but they wanted to make a case against the doctor. It can happen. So, Yeah. So, now he is saying something interesting. Its spiritual achievement, its road of passage towards the supreme aim, will follow these dividing lines. So, if you get stuck on the spiritual planes of consciousness and don't go to this the supermind, you will follow one of these. You will say that the impersonal is the truth, ultimate truth. Or you will say the person is the ultimate truth.
So it's the Gyan Marg or the Bhakti Marg. Basically, when you follow the Gyan Marg, then you will end up in the impersonal, and the Bhakti Marg will take you to the
Yes. And that's why there are so many philosophies also which say that there is no personal God. Buddhism doesn't believe in a personal God. They believe only in an impersonal state of consciousness. Islam also doesn't believe in a personal God. Even Jiddu Krishnamurti, he doesn't believe in a personal God. He had experience only of the impersonality. So, but beyond this movement of spiritual mind is the higher experience of the supermind truth consciousness. That's the third level that we were speaking about. The first level, body, mind, life. Second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness. Third level, supermind. In the Gita, they use the words Kshara Purusha, Akshara Purusha, Uttama Purusha. Kshara Purusha, mutable being. Akshara Purusha, immutable being. And the last one, the supreme person. So these are the three levels. Truth consciousness. There, these opposites disappear and these partialities are relinquished in the rich totality of the supreme and integral realization of the divine being. It is this that is the aim we have conceived. When we read Life Divine, we have to stress the word we, because it is from those view that he is saying. It's not any we. When he says we, he is saying
Third
the
person,
integral view.
Third person.
Yeah. The integral view. That's why we have to stress the word we have conceived. The consummation of our existence here by an ascent to the supramental truth consciousness and its descent into our nature. Now see that. It's not enough to go there only. You must have a descent into the... At the Vedic time, the descent had not taken place. But they had gone there, but the descent had not taken place. Now, they managed to bring that down and descend it, but individually nobody has yet reached that consciousness. So, the descent. The psychic transformation, after rising into the spiritual change, has then to be completed, integralized, exceeded and uplifted by supramental transformation, which lifts it to the summit of the ascending endeavor. So, here he has just in one para, he has told you the three things. But there is a chapter in the Life Divine, the triple transformation. First is the psychicization, second is the spiritualization, third is the supramentalization. The psychicization will change the body-mind life. The spiritualization will take you into the impersonal aspect of the divine. And the supramentalization will make even the body perfect. So that's the three stages that he's talking about. Triple transformation. Okay.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste.